Welcome to FBB Forum. I'm very pleased to welcome the stunning IFBB pro bodybuilder and powerlifter Eva Dunbar to the podcast. Eva has been competing in bodybuilding since 2013 and powerlifting shortly after that. She earned her IFBB pro card in 2017 in women's physique at the North Americans and competed in her first pro show in Tampa in 2021. And she most recently competed at the Savannah Pro in 2022, where she placed in the top 5. Welcome, Eva. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, my first few questions are about how you got started in bodybuilding. And I was wondering if you had an athletic or sports background before you started in the sport.
Yeah, so I did the usual high school sports. I was an avid skier my whole life. Really have weightlifted right from the age of 17. It was just something to kind of keep off, the freshman 15. I always loved to lift. And then became more serious as time went on. And then in 2013, I made a switch and decided that I wanted to, do a little bit more and compete in that. And so that's kind of what brought me there. My cousin was getting into it. She was a figure competitor. She was competing and she said, "Oh, you should really, get into this." And so I did and did my first show at that time.
That's awesome. Who was your cousin?
Her name is Rachel Doucette. So we were, pretty close. She loved to go to the gym. She was actually running, doing marathons, things like that. And so she just had mentioned that to me one day, and I had been lifting and loved going to the gym, was training and all that kind of stuff. And so she was definitely pushing me in that direction. I had looked up to a couple of other people, but in my hometown, there was a lady who used to do a lot of aerobics classes, and she had actually put a gym there when I was, young. I think I was 17 years old, 16, 17.
Mhm.
And she had some weights, and that's what I was exposed to early on, which kind of set me up to be able to kind of know what I'm doing and know how to handle myself in the gym and do it properly.
Very cool. That's awesome. And you mentioned that you're from a small town in New Brunswick?
I am. So it's home of the largest covered bridge in the world. It's a little place called Heartland.
Okay.
There's no, it's so small. There's only stop signs. There's no stoplight. So
Oh,
very,
wow.
very rural uh, town in New Brunswick.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, now, when you first started competing, did you have like a fitness role model or that you looked up to, and do you have a role model now that's the same or different?
Well, so when I started competing, I competed in women's physique. I was never one to put on a set of heels. I went right into that right away. That's what my vibe was.
Yeah,
And, researching and looking at, what they were looking for, the criteria. I'd followed Juliana Malacarn. She was my favorite. I'd watched her compete again at the New York Pro. And so she was really kind of the inspiration of just that beautiful, feminine, muscular woman that, was just kind of, I knew was attainable. And so I kind of looked at that. I don't really have a role model now. I have people that I find inspiring, that I watch their general, their journeys, and we all kind of watch things on social media. But
yeah,
I really just kind of look in the mirror and I inspire to look a certain way. And so when I'm competing, I'm not looking and saying I want to look like this or have that based on judging criteria. I mean, that's changed so much over the years.
yeah,
First they want them to be big and then you need to downsize. And for me, it's just I have this vision in my mind of the way that I'd like to look, and I stay true to kind of what I'm seeing. And it takes time to do that. And the sport of bodybuilding is really an art. And so I'm just getting better at that over time and learning to be a better dieter and train more efficiently. Training for powerlifting and bodybuilding are completely different. And
yeah.
the focus is, even though you're still lifting heavy weights, it's just a different type of feel. And so I've just really been navigating that the last few years.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Um, Yet in terms of your powerlifting, how long have you been a powerlifter? And I was curious, when you mentioned the difference in training, um, is it tough to do a powerlifting meet and a bodybuilding show in the same year because it's so different?
It is. It's very different. At first, I'll have to say that at first I thought I could do both. So, I would kind of switch back and forth. And I found that the level of conditioning required to be competitive in bodybuilding is extremely difficult to do in the same year. And so
Yeah.
I did win my pro card in September of 2017, and then it was in April of 2018 that I took the all-time strongest person in the world. Those are obviously records that change periodically, but
Yeah.
at that point in time, I think, that time frame is that's not very long, but I had shift, of course, my training, my nutrition, going back into super heavy, eating a lot more food. But it takes time coming out of that. I can maintain a certain amount of strength, but I always found that my upper body strength really took a hit. So my bench would go down and things like that.
Sure. What that's really cool that you were the world's strongest woman at the time. What were your records at that time?
So actually it's funny because it's now I think changed. I think they go by the dots, but at the time it was the highest Wilk score. And I had taken it from a Russian guy by the name of Yuri Belkin. Um, and so I squatted at that one. It was 537. I benched 314, 315, and
Wow.
then the deadlift was 320 at that particular meet. It gave me a total of like 13, I think it was 1370. And I was I think I weighed in at 146.6. I think that was my final weigh-in.
Wow, that's impressive. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work, but I mean my heart's always been powerlifting because I love to lift weight. I just love to train.
Yeah. I really like when power lifters do bodybuilding because it really does enhance your whole physique and it's adds a lot
Well,
of depth to your muscles, I think.
doing those big multi-joint movements really are what put on a lot of density in a physique.
Yeah.
And so I think, over the repetitiveness of that over time, that just kind of comes.
Hmm.
So that's definitely where that's where my leg size came from sure. It's like squatting all the time and deadlifting baby burns.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Now, back to bodybuilding, I was curious when you first went up on stage in a bikini, were you nervous? Because, if you think about it, it's not something you do every day,
Oh
It's,
my God, yes, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified.
I bet.
I think when you start competing, and even now, even when I go up on stage, maybe not so much this last show, but up until very recently, it's always that, sense of belonging. Do I look good enough? Am I lean enough? Am I going to show up, good enough? And so I
Hmm.
think especially with my very first show, it was a sense of, do I belong? Do I have enough muscle for women's physique? Just because I kind of jumped right into that. I didn't kind of work my way up from figure.
I see.
Um, I looked beautiful on stage. I wasn't anywhere lean enough, and so that came with time and obviously dieting is a skill for sure. So learning what to eat and how to program nutrition and follow a diet properly.
Yeah, that's really challenging. I admire you. That's a lot of hard work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely scared out of my mind for the first show.
I
But it's
bet.
funny because once you step on stage, it wasn't so much the bikini because I mean our swimsuits they're okay. It's sparkly and there's a day of glam and you get to go up and feel kind of like a princess the day off. But once you get under the lights and you're posing and you're showing off, it's the best that you've ever looked, and
Yeah,
so there's that element of confidence that you gain from that.
that's
I've
true.
always been kind of a confident woman and always tried to feel comfortable in my skin. So for me, it wasn't so much the suit, it was just the experience and being up there in front of just, showcasing in front of an audience. It's just that a performer almost, if you will.
Yeah, I think it takes a while to get comfortable doing that. Just because it's yeah, and you're being judged and you have all that huge audience, watching you too, so it just takes a little while to get used to that, I would think.
Yeah, and the posing routines, getting better at posing, becoming more confident, making it
Mhm.
less robotic and more like a dance. And so,
Mhm.
with this last year, working with Sheila Black and really coming into my own with posing, I felt so much more confident
Mm.
and and excited to be able to come out and show my hard work and showcase my body and in the way that I had programmed it for that particular routine.
That's great. When did you start working with Sheila?
So last year when I decided that I was going to do Savannah, I reached out to her. I've followed Sheila forever. I think, she has so many accolades in the sport and she's definitely an OG.
Yeah.
And so I just loved her vibe. And so I reached out and said, hey, listen, I don't know if you're taking clients on and if you'd have me and want to be able to work with me to make me not look so stiff on stage.
Yeah.
So it was definitely one of the best things that I could have done. I really enjoyed working with her.
That's
She made me
terrific.
a lot better.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing, and her posing was always terrific on stage. I
Mhm.
remember,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, she's definitely fire when she's on stage.
and she is an OG too. Yeah, it's cool that you're working with her. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, my next few questions are about your family and home life, and I was curious, what do your parents think about your fitness career, and are they supportive?
Oh my goodness. My mom, up until my pro debut, had never missed a competition, a bodybuilding show. I
Wow.
mean, one year her and I drove clear across Canada to Canadian Nationals, which was just outside of Vancouver in British
Wow.
Columbia, which if anybody knows any geography, they'd recognize that that's like from one coast to the next. So
Yeah.
we took 5 days to do that and 5 days to come back, and it was a trip of a lifetime, really, with her. She's always been, my biggest fan.
Great.
My dad is super supportive too, in the sense that he doesn't really understand a lot of it, but he's come to meets and he's very supportive of, me just being my best. And so I'm
Mm.
extremely fortunate that I've come from a great family and people that support, what I want to do and how I like to live my life.
That's impressive that you drove from New Brunswick to Vancouver. Wow.
Yeah, it really was quite a road trip. I mean, if unless you live in Canada and really have a concept of just how big it is and what kind of drive that is, the
Yeah.
the driving across the prairies, in
Mhm.
the summer, and you can see it's just so beautiful, and it was really a lot of fun.
I don't know if folks know, but New Brunswick is in the Atlantic time zone. So you're like east of the Eastern time zone. So you got a long
Yeah.
ways to go.
Yeah, when I call home now, it's a 4 hour difference.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're in because you're in San
I
Diego.
might be just getting off work and my mom's going to bed.
Oh
So,
yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. That's great that you did that though. And that she
mhm.
went with you. Now
Yeah,
I was curious, do you have kids?
I don't. I
No?
don't have kids.
Okay,
No.
cool. Do you have to have kids in the future or?
I've talked about that with my partner, and I've basically decided that I don't want to have children,
Sure.
that's definitely a personal decision based on basically how the world is now. I just don't
Sure.
feel comfortable with that. But part of me too is that when you have children, I feel that there's so much love that you have to offer, but I'm kind of selfish with my partner that I don't want to have to share that time,
Yeah, sure.
later in life. And so for me, it's more about being able to give all of my love and attention to him and our relationship and our ability to live our life together instead of having to compromise and share that with children. So
Sure.
I think that's a decision that him and I've made that we're both comfortable with.
That's terrific. I think that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I've got one kid and they can be kind of a pain in the ass too. So
Well, yeah, I think, I just was never growing up, it was not something that I ever really thought too much of. I'm an
uh-huh.
only child. I'm not sure why. It was just not, I was always either, career oriented or just wasn't the right time or with the right people, and so I
Yeah,
mean, as time's gone on, that's just kind of how I've laid that out for myself.
sure. I understand. My daughter, I just want her to put me in a good nursing home. So I got, I think you're kind of spoiled.
Yeah. Well, that's right, though. You have kids, right? Because then you look after them, and then at older age, they look after you. So
Yeah,
that's not a bad deal.
yeah, that's true. Um, Now, you mentioned you lived in San Diego. Have you found that to be a supportive bodybuilding community?
I do. We go to the gym that used to be the old world's gym. I've gone there forever, even when I didn't live here, I would compete here, or if I came here to visit, there was always the gym to go to.
Yeah,
It's huge. It's 3 floors. It's odd. There's an outdoor gym. It was open during COVID. And my partner, Derek, he actually works out of there as well. So I mean, he's a trainer, been a fitness trainer for years, but also a massage therapist too, and works on, all the big bodybuilders. And so it feels like home there. I mean, the people that own it are absolutely amazing. So it's definitely a great vibe. I couldn't ask for a better place to train.
that's terrific. That sounds awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, I love San Diego. The weather is always amazing, except for this year, it was kind of crazy. We had so much rain for a
yeah,
while,
that's
but
true.
really most of the time it's super consistent. There's just something about living beside the beach. It's expensive to live here, but
Yeah,
you pay for where you live, and it's definitely worth it.
it is. That's a beautiful place. I visited there a few years back, and it is. It's a great spot. Yeah. Now, I was curious, do you find it hard to juggle the demands of, work life and bodybuilding and home life? Is it a little hectic for you, or do you have a
Um,
great balance?
well, I'm a certified health coach, and so I do a lot of corrective exercise and work with people
Hmm.
in the gym. So I train people. I work with people, online. And it really allows me to have the freedom to be able to do what I want to do and pursue the things in bodybuilding so I can support the hobby. And also my home life, I couldn't ask for a better situation. I
Hmm.
mean, my partner has been a bodybuilder for, 3 decades. And
Oh,
so yeah, I mean, he's
hmm.
very established in that, and so teaches me things all the time.
Yeah.
But being able to do it together, a lot of people that bodybuild at couples, they fight or they can't do it together. It's just they're not compatible that way. And for him and I, it actually makes us better. And so
Great.
because he is such a professional at what he's done and I'm a perfectionist, I think that, we really understand each other, and it gives us the ability to compete at a high level together and just kind of pick up the slack where other ones falter. So,
Hmm.
if I'm tired tonight, I mean, he cooks, he does all these things. When we have 3 Frenchies too, we have 3 dogs.
Oh yeah.
And actually, last year, when we were getting ready to compete, we had 3 dogs before. We had a pug, a bulldog, and a Frenchie. And
Okay.
we lost our pug, just kind of, it was kind of unexpected. And then the bulldog, she was a little bit older, but we lost them around the same period. And so
Okay.
we had the Frenchie by himself, and it was kind of funny because he was acting strange, and he was missing the other dogs. Anyway,
Yeah.
long story short, we knew people that had puppies, and so we got connected, and we went to go look at a Frenchie and came home with two.
Oh,
And
nice. Very
so
cool.
during prep last year, we were raising Frenchie puppies. And
Oh,
I'm pretty sure what made it so much better was that my mom actually, I hadn't seen my mom in years because of COVID and a lack of ability to travel. And so
yeah.
he came here. We were about 3 weeks out from prep. And by the time that she left, the dogs were potty trained. So it
Oh,
worked out well. She she came right at the right time. And so, I mean, any kind of situations that come up for us that would be kind of stressful, we just seem to work through it and do it well. So
terrific. That's great.
yeah.
And you said that Derek is your coach too, Derek Farnsworth, right?
He is, yeah, yeah. So he coaches me as well.
Yeah.
It's it's cool because you always have that set of eyes on you. So when we're training in the gym, I don't have to take crazy pictures and do all these formality things. We train. We have
Yeah.
an upstairs place where you can take a look at each other and kind of figure out what's going to be happening for next week's diet. And so it just flows really well. Just I'm pretty lucky that way.
That's terrific. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long has he been your coaching, or did you ever have a different coach?
So yeah, I had a coach before him. I was with Greg Doucette for years.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that was basically Greg took me from my beginnings into really, we won my pro card and stuff together. And then just because I had moved to the United States and then I came actually over to the West Coast, I was in Vegas for a little while. And once I was ready to compete again, I just wanted to have somebody that was, that could see me, that was closer. I think,
Hmm.
online coaching is cool and it's totally doable, but
Hmm.
where I was transitioning and I was really trying to change some things in my body, in powerlifting, the funny thing is that I was so tight. And when your muscles are tight, they look different. And
Yeah.
so I really had to, I originally had talked to him about, body work and things like this, but I really had to look at things from a holistic perspective and how to change the look of my body because when your body is tight, you move different. And when you move different, it changes the way that you can build your physique. And so,
Hmm.
he was definitely the feather in my hat when it comes to that, because that's his specialty. And so we
Hmm.
really took my body from being, this tight, compact, ridden, lack of mobility vessel to really opening me up and showcasing kind of the way that my muscles could look, so not just making me healthier all around, but definitely changing the aesthetic look that I had, even with dense muscle. It just flows different, when you do the proper therapies.
That's terrific. So he's really helped you a lot with that, huh? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
he has. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've learned an immense amount about not just like training and dieting, but just really recovery and focusing more on some of those things that promotes the longevity of the sport, not just,
Hmm.
what's it going to look like for the next time, but really overall wellness on that.
Hmm. That's great. That's really cool.
Yeah, powerlifting can be extremely hard on your body, uh,
Yeah.
especially if some people I think naturally are just really good at movements and they don't realize when they're doing the movements what they do right, and or what they do wrong.
Hmm.
And so though, you can develop different tightnesses and issues that can create injury down the line.
Hmm.
Um, Fortunately, I think I've always been really good. I was a really great lifter.
Hmm.
Always very cautious and attentive to the detail. I mean, obviously, for me to be able to lift the weights that I did, but a lot of that came natural.
Hmm.
And so, working with Derek and focusing on different things, I've learned a lot about my body and just how it naturally goes, or, things that naturally become more tense on me that I had never recognized before. So
Hmm.
it's been a real journey in that, and I find that stuff really fascinating. So it's
Yeah.
not only has it made me a better competitor, but it's made me a better trainer and a coach myself.
Hmm. That's great. Yeah. And that's really cool. That's really neat. And I bet you had mentioned prepping for a show together. Was that in Tampa?
Yeah. So so my pro debut was Tampa when you saw me.
Yeah.
Uh, and he had done that show the year before, and it's a great show. It's a big show.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
that was nerve-wracking for sure, just because it's, a prestigious show. It was huge. But it was a lot of fun, and him and I doing together, and I think I mentioned this, that it just seems, when you're in prep, we just become even more in sync, in
Yeah.
so some couples don't do that well, but him and I do that very well. So it just kind of enhances the experience, takes the stress out.
That's terrific. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've known folks who, yeah, tried to prep together and it didn't jive because they both had prep brain and it just was tough to deal with each other, maybe, you know.
True. And I think I think there's different levels of dieters. There's, it affects people differently, but Derek he's definitely, we joke around and I just say he's the best dieter that I've ever known because he doesn't change when he diets. He's
Really?
always the same. Yeah, some people get cranky or they get short, they get tired. For him, he just gets quiet.
Hmm.
He's not somebody that gets too excited. He's less excitable when he's on prep than not. So
Really?
his yeah, so it
Hmm.
works out well. But that's focus and that's years of, knowing what you need to do in order to reach the end goal.
That's true. And he's been competing for so long too. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
really good. Now I was curious, when you're in the middle of prep, what's the toughest aspect of prep for you?
Um, Sometimes a little bit of body dysmorphia.
Hmm.
Um, it's, I'm a perfectionist, and so, not being able to see some of the changes sometimes, or, and it's helpful. That's why you need a second set of eyes.
Hmm.
Um, that push. Sometimes I have a problem with wanting to push too much, and that will not necessarily work in your favor. Sometimes, you'll take two steps back if you do that. And
Hmm.
so more is not always more, sometimes less is more. And so really just being able to listen to Derek at those times, and not overdo it, and recognize, when to push and when to pull back.
Hmm. That's great. Now I was curious, when you're doing prep, is there a particular food item that you miss the most?
It's kind of funny because the answer to that is actually no.
Yeah.
I'm a foodie at heart,
Uh-huh.
and I find that for him and I mean, I love pizza. That's just kind of been always one of the things that's been my jam. And when we do our refeeds, we'll eat gluten-free pizza. And so a lot of the times that when we do these refeeds, we do foods that we could have closer to the show, or when we're carving up at the show, that doesn't inhibit, what the look we're trying to go for. And so,
Okay.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is the week before the show, they start changing things or eating things. And I mean, everything goes down to how well you're digesting it, making sure you're not bloated and all these things.
Hmm.
And so we don't really change anything that we do, a
Hmm.
competition that we do regularly. I mean, even to be honest with you, in off season, I just eat more of the things that I eat when I'm on prep.
Hmm.
The only difference might be where him and I might, because we're not Derek's a chocoholic, but for me, I like cheesecake or something, but I like salty foods. I'm a huge salt fan, and so I
Hmm.
think, you know, not a lot, those things, just it doesn't really change too much.
Yeah.
So when we're carving up, I think the day of the show, you tend to, if I'm doing, like, other things that are more like apple pie, or whatever, I feel like by the end of the night, I'm just looking for clean food, or I'm looking for just something that's just not as intense as the foods that I was eating earlier. So, a steak or something is generally what we have.
Okay. Cool.
Mm.
That's really cool. That's on this podcast, I don't think I've had anybody say that. And say in terms of, it sounds kind of easy for you with the diet and stuff, which is good. I mean, that's a good.
Well, I think well, it's not a problem. I think the reason why it seems easier is just because we do things, you set yourself up earlier, you're thinking about those things earlier to make the end result easier, or not as,
Hmm.
as intense. And so I think it's all really perspective. And of course you're hungry at the end. If you're not hungry, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
But I really think that, one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about in bodybuilding is how easy it is to have issues with food, you
Yeah.
know, and those can develop over time. And that's a very serious issue. And that's something that I work with, my own personal clients, and my coaching with a lot, because there's a huge issue with that.
Yeah.
And in bodybuilding, I mean, I really think that only a small portion of people really should diet, just because of those issues. Bodybuilding is extreme. It's an
Hmm.
extreme sport. The food is extreme. And
Hmm.
so if you know yourself that you aren't good at being able to adhere to, those restrictions,
Hmm.
you should do yourself a favor and not do that, so that you're not hurting yourself down the line,
Yeah.
and so I think being self-aware of those things is important. And so that's
Hmm.
something that I've always been. So I think that's why that it makes it easier for me to maneuver through that stuff.
I understand. That's good. Yeah, it's good advice too.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not definitely not for everybody.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. It's really not. And bodybuilding there's so many more people competing now than even when I started. I can't imagine, how Derek feels about it from when he started.
Yeah.
And social media has really changed those things. For me, when I was going through all this stuff, even as a power lifter, I thought of Bev Francis. I thought she was
Mm,
the coolest ever because she did both. She was so
yeah.
strong. She was the very first woman to ever bench over 300 pounds.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so for me, I just looked at that and I thought, wow, she can do that. That's so cool, as far as a powerlifting inspiration. And she always looked great too. So, you know,
Yeah.
there's something to that. And so for me now, I look at it, and a lot of people in the gym, you have people that are the TikTokers and whatever, and
Hmm.
they're focused on making these videos, and it's cool to be a bodybuilder, but it's one thing to say you are, and it's quite another to be one. And
Yeah.
the physiques definitely reflect that.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. Good point. Very good point.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, I was curious. We're in a little below on time. We got about 9 minutes left, so I'm going to skip
Okay.
ahead a little bit. And we talked a little bit about this, but I was wondering, can you say when and where you hope to compete again? Or are we going to keep that quiet for now?
So I generally don't like to talk about things until I know, and just to kind of give you a little glimpse of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Our very first show of this year clearly is going to be Derek was accepted to the Masters Olympia, so we're going to Romania.
Yeah.
I
Great.
have a show in my mind that I'd like to do, but
Hmm.
I need a few more weeks for me to kind of sort out some things that have been going on. Like I told you, I hate to say injury because injury to me is such a negative word, but
Yeah.
I've been having some issues with one side of my body and just some tightness that I've been working through.
Hmm.
And if you're going to prep, you need to be, for me, I need to be 100% because that's what keeps my mental game there.
Yeah.
And so I can't half-ass anything. And so for me,
Hmm.
in the next few weeks, I'll be determining whether or not that's the case. So I'm either going to go for it, or if not, you'll see me early next year without question.
That's terrific. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing you back on stage. You're pretty
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I've been able to put on a little bit more muscle in the places that I was looking to. It's not so much that I'm trying to be bigger,
Hmm.
because I mean everybody always says more size is better. There's so many channels that promote women to be bigger, but like I told you, I'm looking for a specific look that I want to bring.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily what the judges are looking for this year. It's a physique that I'm proud of, and how that 3D pans out. So making my muscles more 3D is kind of what I'm working on right now. So it's not so much that I want to be bigger. I just want to look fuller in certain areas. And so that's the target for me.
That's great. Well, yeah, that I'm looking forward to seeing you back on stage because you really are remarkable on stage. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
thanks. Now, I was curious when you competed in 2021 and 2022, did you get any specific feedback from judges on where to improve your physique?
When Derek asked Steve, he said, "Does she belong in women's bodybuilding?" And he said, "Absolutely." It was just a
Mhm.
matter of me coming in crisper. I needed to be leaner.
Hmm.
And so that's for me, that's the name of the game for last year. I came in more conditioned last year. I looked better.
Hmm.
And I think I said this before. I think that you just keep putting your head down and you keep putting the work in and enjoying your process every year. And then it just kind of, if you're putting all you've got into it, it just kind of comes. And so, I'm just waiting for my time. That's kind of, I hate to say to take my time because I'm not trying to take that, but I'm just I'm being patient and I'm working my butt off.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
paying your dues for sure. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, I was curious in terms of what's your favorite muscle group to train and what's your least favorite?
Um, it's funny. I love to train legs.
Uh-huh.
Um, I love to train shoulder. There really isn't one that I dislike training, except for biceps. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm not really a huge fan of training biceps.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I kind of take it all in stride. I enjoy it. I go in with a mindset every day of, okay, I'm gonna really get into this combo or whatever. And so it's just training for me is a stress relief. Training for me is just kind of that love that I have a passion for that. I just love to lift heavy weight, and
Hmm.
so it's I if I had to choose one, I'd probably say I love leg day because it's you kind of lose part of your soul when you're in there training, right? But we do actually train legs today on Sundays, and so Sundays are days of recovery for him and I. I like to start my week. My week starts on Sunday because I start with legs.
Okay.
So yes, I'd probably lean more towards that.
Watching sometimes leg training it almost seems like a cartoon because you see like those huge weights and those huge stacks of them, and you're moving all that weight. It's just that's incredible. And to me, it just so impressive, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's I every time before I train legs, I'm nervous. That
Yeah.
I always get nervous before I go into train legs, because it's either
Hmm.
going to be super intense, you always have that in the back of your mind. Is this the one where I get injured, when you put it
Hmm.
all out there?
Yeah.
But there's just something about the euphoria of just really fighting your own fight or flight to stay in it
Hmm.
that I just love.
Mm, that's impressive. Yeah, I'm impressed. I don't know if I could pull that off. Now, one thing I was curious about, do you find it hard to keep up with demands of social media? And do you get a lot of like DMs from fans and competitors that are kind of looking up to you, for instance?
No, I'm probably not the one to talk to about social media. I don't have any special accounts or my OnlyFans or anything like that.
Hmm.
I do like to post and I find I become a little bit more dominant in posting when I'm getting closer to a show just because I find I'm doing posing videos or things like that. I could be
Hmm.
a lot better at that.
Hmm.
Um, I do get DMs. I mean, I get weird DMs from weird men and the usual muscle worship stuff that girls have to deal with. And
Yeah,
I mean, zero tolerance for that stuff.
sure.
That's
I
just
understand.
not, that's just not I've never been really one to be boisterous, on social media. I
Yeah,
actually applaud women that are really good at doing that and being able to market themselves that way,
yeah,
especially now because there's really a demand for that and there's monetary value for that.
sure.
But for me, that's just never really been a thing for me. So I don't really feel pressure on that. I do it when I feel like it, and I feel that for me just is more authentic in how I do it.
Earlier, we talked about Dana Lynn Bailey, who is kind of like a master of marketing through social media,
Yeah,
I think. And
she is.
yeah, and she back, 10 years ago and even now, she's still really good at it. Yeah.
Totally. And being able to create kind of that brand for yourself. I mean, there's definitely money to be made, and kudos to the people that are really good at that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I admire that.
I have a lot of admiration for that.
That's great. Very cool. Now, I was curious if you were in a leadership position with NPC or IFBB, what would you do to improve the sport of bodybuilding, and how would you try to make the sport better?
Well, for sure, I would like to bring more women's physique bodybuilding shows to the West Coast. It's just
Yeah.
non-existent. It's
Hmm.
non-existent.
Yeah.
And I think there are some levels there that obviously need to change, or the people running it.
Hmm.
I'd like to see more shows, but as I said before, to have more shows, it's money,
Hmm.
incentives. I'd like to see there be more money for women competing because it's not easy what women bodybuilders do.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so yeah, I think every women bodybuilder that you talk to would say that they wish that there was more prize money,
Hmm.
and incentive to want to compete. But then the girls have to show up at the meet, or excuse, I say meets because that's kind of the powerlifter in me, but
Sure.
the shows that are put out there for women, last year there were a lot of shows that were there that nobody showed up to. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's a tough pill for, promoters to swallow. So I can see both sides of the track on that. But I really would like to see there'd be a lot more opportunity for female bodybuilders
Hmm.
and maybe less stigma on that.
I agree with you on that. And yeah. Well, we're about to run out of time, but I wanted to thank you so much for being on with me, and I'll get this posted to YouTube soon, and I'll include your Instagram and Derek's too, and Sheila's as well. But
That would be great. I appreciate that.
yeah, thank you. But thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on, and best wishes for competing this year or next year.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Eva.
Bye.
Take care.